This is the 2024 American Psychiatric Association annual meeting, Psychiatric News Highlights video series. I'm Dr. Adrian Preda, the editor-in-chief of Psychiatric News, and my guest today is Jessica Tran. Jessica, welcome. We are meeting following our press brief, where I found out about your research about youth exposure to e-cigarette content on Instagram. How effective are current regulatory policies? Before we get into the topic, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in studying this?
Yes, so I'm an incoming fourth-year medical student at UTMB, and I plan on applying to psychiatry residency this year. I have an interest in social media research and working with children and adolescents in my future practice. And so more and more these days, children are on social media, and it's just a really important topic to kind of look into and see what kind of exposures these kids are having and how it's affecting their overall psychiatric health and their overall well-being. And so that's kind of what initially made me interested in this topic.
So, and you are the right generation. You know much more about this than I do.
Kind of the transition generation, yes.
How did you decide to go about studying your question? E-cigarettes is a big issue. Seems like many times youth don't perceive it as being a real problem, right? It's represented in social media. How did you decide to set up your project?
Yes, so I recognize I have an interest in kind of public health research and community engagement, and I've done a lot of work with this age group throughout medical school. And so one thing I've recognized is that the youth vaping crisis is a bigger deal these days. And I specifically wanted to look at Instagram because I personally use Instagram every day, and I know that kids has wide appeal for both middle schoolers and high schoolers, and that's kind of how I decided to look at Instagram and kind of see the current landscape for e-cigarette marketing.
Do you know how big of a problem this is?
Yeah, so currently more than 2.1 million middle schoolers and high schoolers combined use e-cigarettes, and then looking at high schoolers specifically, nearly 1 in 4 use an e-cigarette product every single day. And this is according to the FDA's National Youth Tobacco Survey as of last year. We anticipate that number is growing. And not only that, but more and more kids are on social media now more than ever. And Instagram is, I think, one of the largest, if not the largest, social media marketing for vape brands. And so we see that this is continuing to be a problem, something that we're going to have to deal with in the years to come.
Yeah, big problem. So how did you go about it?
Yes, so our main question was we wanted to look at, are these e-cigarette posts abiding by current regulatory policies? And so we looked at 2 policies in particular. The FDA in 2018 established a policy that all e-cigarette content contain a warning indicating the addictive potential of nicotine. And then in 2019, they instituted an age limit. The legal age for purchasing e-cigarettes increased from 18 to 21. And so we looked at the presence of both age and health-related warnings. And then we also looked at Instagram's branded content policy, which explicitly prohibits sponsored posts for e-cigarettes and vapes and related content. And so to do this, we created a 14-year-old profile and then using an incognito web browser to prevent Instagram from kind of tailoring its search results to our search history or location. We queried the popular posts about e-cigarettes using popular hashtags like vape fam, vape community, e-liquid, and then of those posts, we excluded the ones that were duplicates, not in English, unrelated, and we ended up with a total sample of 51 posts for analysis. And then these posts we analyzed for common themes, common marketing appeals, specifically catered towards youth, engagement rates, accuracy of information. We kind of looked at all these things.
What'd you find?
So what we found was that the vast majority of the posts violated both FDA regulations and Instagram regulations. So 2/3 of the posts violated FDA regulations, did not contain a warning label regarding the addictive potential of nicotine, and did not contain the age limit. Also, the Instagram banner policy, about half of the posts were posted by like vape brands, vape ambassadors, vape shops, which is explicitly prohibited by Instagram. But we found that it was, that dominated the vape-related content that we encountered.
What's a vape ambassador?
Oh, yes. So vape ambassadors, there's a couple terms, social media terms that I'll define here, but vape ambassadors are influencers or accounts with a large following of greater than 10,000 is what we found on Google to be kind of the accepted threshold to be determined an influencer. And then vape ambassadors are compensated to represent a vape brand or promote a vape product. And so these people, offer discount codes to purchase a vape product, or they have like links to purchase directly in their bio, things like that. And it dominates a lot of the content that we found on Instagram.
So there are two types of problems. So there is the sort of everyday post where people are vaping and they're presenting it in a positive light. But then there is even a bigger problem.
Right.
It sounds like, if I understand this, with the vape ambassadors who are actually really directly promoting the product, and yet they do not respect the policy regulations. Right. Is that what you found?
Yes. And I will also say, so the vape ambassadors, they're promoting their products, and their audience most likely consists of people who already use vapes. But regular influencers who kind of promote other types of content, like lifestyle content, beauty content, whatnot, and when they post vape-related content, they're appealing to potentially users who don't even use e-cigarettes yet, but they're exposing them to it. And so we have like kind of two problems going on. Those who currently use e-cigarettes are being, exposed to this content that continues to promote it, and those who don't use e-cigarettes but see that someone that they trust on social media is using e-cigarettes, and then that can potentially lead to increased usage or initiation of e-cigarette use.
Right. So I understand that the numbers are small, but any preliminary conclusions that any recommendations that you could say, can be taken back to the social media based on what you found? So
something that we found was that the vaping industry on social media, on Instagram in particular, had a really high engagement rate. So social media analysts kind of decide that 1 to 5% engagement rate is considered a good engagement rate. And we looked at the engagement rate of each of the posts in our study and found that the average engagement rate was around 4.7%. So kind of on the higher end, meaning that people are engaging with this content more than, with other content on Instagram. And that can be an avenue for more educational content regarding the harms of vaping. Health educators and public health experts have a space here to tailor their educational content to youth using the marketing appeals that we found to be most effective, like humor, lifestyle appeals, appealing to youth culture. There's a lot of potential here, I think, on Instagram and other social media platforms for more educational content about vaping.
Is there a way to provide social media with feedback on problematic regulatory aspects?
Can you clarify your question?
So in other words, if you were to go, is there a way to go back to Instagram and say, the FDA policies with regard to this specific issue, the e-cigarettes, it seems like, there are some cases where the policies are not respected or actually violated.
Right. I think in my research, I found that Instagram is doing, taking some steps to address the problem. They have age gating restrictions. They have a sensitive viewing option for people less than 16 can't view certain content, and it's automatically activated for accounts below the age of 16. They have a number of other kind of policies in place, but evidently it's not really being enforced. I think there is potential for us to kind of tell something to Instagram, like, hey, we came across these posts. Perhaps they can remove those sponsored posts or take down those accounts. But still, it doesn't really address the root of the issue. And additionally, another factor is that social media is global. And, the FDA can only control or regulate posts within the US, but then I found a lot of posts from foreign countries, and, those are beyond our scope of regulations. And so it's kind of a difficult problem to address on all sides.
So then what other solutions?
Yeah, so there are a number of possible solutions on multiple scales. So like policy-wise, we talked about FDA and Instagram. Sort of on the individual scale, parents can kind of monitor their kids' social media accounts more thoroughly. I think a lot of times these days, parents just give their kids like an iPad or phone and just let them be distracted, but maybe a little bit more stricter monitoring can help mitigate their exposure to this type of content. And then at the community level, like schools and public health can employ public health campaigns and kind of cater that messaging towards youth in a way that would be well received by them. And so, definitely using the marketing appeals that we looked at. So the humor, the lifestyle, appealing to youth culture, that seems to be really well received by youth, and we can definitely use that to tailor our educational content.
So in other words, as it's because of all these challenges, it's difficult to control the content.
Right.
The solution would be to provide educational content,
right, to
that
kind of
would
maybe
get the audience better
right.
prepared to face the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about future steps in your research?
Future steps. Our current study is kind of a preliminary study. We had a very small sample size of about 51 posts, and we only looked at Instagram, but we specifically look at posts within like a 3-month date range. So we anticipate looking at other social media platforms. TikTok, YouTube are also really commonly used among youth these days. And we also hope to expand our sample size and look at a wider date range. And then also maybe employing more rigorous social media analytics and looking at like engagement rate and also reach of posts. So not only how many of the account's followers are engaging with that post, but also the reach of that post to like non-followers as well, and kind of seeing, what content are youth most engaging with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, this is very important work. I think it's safe to predict that the problem will probably grow because social media is growing as we speak. So I think it's very important to look at it. And I thank you for actually being curious and doing this work that has great value. And thank you for participating in our conversation today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.